Hey everybody, welcome to James Quest and Happy New Year's to you. It's been a busy time, obviously Christmas, New Year's, all that. I'm kind of behind on my recording and reviews of stuff, but a couple days ago, I did watch Nosferatu, the new Robert Eggers horror film, and yeah, this was pretty much exactly how I expected it to be. So, first, it's a remake of course, the 1920 something Nosferatu, and yeah, it is obviously a classic film that for a lot of us were first introduced to through SpongeBob SquarePants. So like we all saw the episode when we were kids of Nosferatu, and of course I'm like, oh okay, so that's who that is. I didn't know until like years later that okay, the actual Nosferatu movie was an unlicensed adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula. So it does follow the exact same story of Dracula, but with just all the names changed. So going into this, I'm like, okay, so it's the Dracula story, very classic Dracula, but also it's a Robert Eggers movie. So if you don't know, Robert Eggers tends to be hyper historically accurate as much as he can be, like, and not just in the way people dress and the way they talk and the way things look, but also he goes back to the original mythology of things. So for example, in The Witch, which was an amazing movie by the way, or The Vovovitch, it was two V's, anyways, The Witch, he kind of went back to the original stories of like, well, what did people back then actually think witches were and witches actually did, and so he used that mythology to build like what the situation was in that one. And so he does the same thing here with vampires. He goes all the way back to the original ideas of what a vampire was, and this is what we have in this movie, which means a lot of the Hollywood tapestry that we have now of what a vampire should be, everything from, of course, your Dracula movies that have been made over the many decades, all the way to your Blade and your Twilight and like any kind of underworlds, all the vampire movies you can think of, anything you have an idea of what a vampire does. And they run around and they bite a character and then that person dies and becomes a vampire, and now our heroes have to fight someone that they previously knew because they're a vampire now. You got like your Lost Boys situation, you got like all this stuff, right? You kind of have to throw away a lot of those ideas of what a vampire even is, because we're going like way back, and I feel like this is a movie that's gonna have a lot of people going into it thinking, oh, it's just a vampire movie, it's another Dracula retelling, and that's gonna be kind of a problem for some people, for some audiences who are kind of more used to Hollywood vampires. And what I mean to say is that this is not a movie where there are vampires running around all over the place. There's just the one, like I kind of kept expecting like, okay, so he bites this person and he bites that person and he has these followers and they're all going to become vampires and they got to hunt them all down. But like, no, that's not this movie. That's not what's happening here. This is very much more atmospheric. They treat Count Orlok as this like shadowy figure who's literally looming over the city, and this plague that he brought with him, he's kind of like the personification of this plague, so like there are these like plague rats running around the city that came when he showed up on his boat, and everyone's starting to get sick and everyone's dying, and it's kind of like this idea of like, well, it's not just that the rats are carrying the plague, it's like he is the plague, he brought it with him, he controls it, he reaches his hand across the city and this great shadow comes over it, and everyone starts dying, and it's a lot more I guess theatrical is the way I would put it. The idea of him being a vampire is a lot more like operatic, he's very much a shadow figure, and I think that is another thing that we're gonna have to address, is that like they did kind of adapt the way that he looks. I saw an interview where they're like, okay, well, what does a Transylvanian noblemen look like at this time period? What did they dress like? What kind of hairstyle did they have? So like, yeah, this Nosferatu, he's got a mustache, he's got like a comb over, but also he's all corpsey, and his body's bloated, and his arms and legs are all like emaciated and all like skeletal looking, you know. So like he still looks monsterish, but like you can tell they kind of went more the corpsey route, you know. But again, like, and that's what I mean, is like Robert Eggers tries to be like historically accurate, and like the ideas of like, he looks like a body who's been dead for a while and then came back. He doesn't look like, he doesn't have pointy ears and have like the giant fangs and all that stuff, like, you know, like Nosferatu, like that we know from the original movie. He looks like a corpse, you know. So this is definitely a movie, I think, that if you're not here for atmosphere, if you're not here for like, I guess gothic horror vibes, then you're not really gonna gel with this movie, really, you know. And I think that's gonna be like another sticking point for a lot of people. Like, this is something that like you look at, you know, like you put on and you just like look at the visuals of it, and you kind of, it's more of an experience than just a, all right, gang, we're gonna get together and we're gonna kill a bunch of vampires, and they have like a montage where like, you know, like a Lost Boys situation where we're like, all right, we're gonna kill this one with a stereo, and that thing explodes, and that's another vampire dead. You know, it's just not that. You know, it's a very tension filled but atmospheric in a way. So the other thing is we have what's her name, Lily Rose Depp, and this was like a whole controversy I was not a part of. I didn't pay attention to this leading up to the movie. I guess it's because obviously she's the daughter of Johnny Depp and somebody else. I don't know who her mom is, but you know, a lot of nepotism claims are being thrown her way because like, oh, she only got this part because her dad's Johnny Depp, which I don't know, maybe. I'm not here to judge on that. A lot of people are kind of griping on her performance apparently, and I don't know, I thought she did fine. My thing is like, these people are talking the way they would talk back then, you know, and it's all very, I guess my thing is, a lot of people, we don't make a lot of gothic romance, like classic gothic romance type things anymore, and so a lot of people kind of confuse the same I guess dressings with horror movies that we have today, you know, when they're actually kind of very different, right? Like the way that they're gonna speak, and she's gonna be like, I saw a great shadow in my sleep, he came to me, you know, like, and it's gonna be like, that's what it is, you know. And so she's doing the thing like this, that's, yeah, that's the gothic romance of it all. So I thought she did fine. Willem Dafoe, of course, he comes in here as not Van Helsing, who is just, they're like, oh, crazy crazy Willem Dafoe, he believes in the occults and demons and all this stuff. And of course, in any other instance, he would be dismissed as the crazy guy. He lost his doctorate license and all this stuff, and he's been dismissed and laughed out of Sweden and all this stuff. But of course, here he turns out to be right. It's like, oh yeah, there really is something this time. There really is a Nosferatu. And so of course he comes out with plans to try and stop him, and tries to explain. And I think that's the other thing, is that like, these are characters who are learning for the first time ever what a vampire is and how it works, and so the movie spends a lot of time kind of explaining a lot of things that you might, as an audience, could be like, yeah, I know all this, we've seen a million movies with vampires, we know how it works. But like, you know, it's just, they're kind of going over like, this is how it traditionally works, you know. He is this plague, this demon, this infection in the city, and he's basically infected this lady who he loves and wants to, you know, he wants to get with, right? And I think that's another thing that's going to throw a lot of people off. This is I think there should have been a lot more oh, what was the movie with the water creature? Oh, The Shape of Water. Yeah, there should have been a lot more Shape of Water comparisons, because yeah, this movie is about basically a monster trying to get with this lady, and part of this lady's, she's like sort of possessed and she's longing for him, but then she'll come back to normal and she'll be like, no, my husband, I love you, no, you know. But then like the next night she'll be like, oh, Nosferatu, you know, my love, you know. And yeah, it does. The movie ends with them getting together, you know. And yeah, it's meant to be, you know, it's meant to be kind of that classical like gothic romance metaphor for, you know, being in love with death. And look, I'm not here to be the person who's going to analyze all this stuff about like what it all is a metaphor for, but there's something there, you know, about like being in love with death and women having sex with you know, corpses, because that's what Dracula is, or Nosferatu, you know, he's a corpse. Anyways, the one thing I really did not expect, and I have never actually seen the original Nosferatu, I didn't expect the ending here, so this is going to be like my spoiler of how, you know, they finally deal with this, because I guess in my mind I'm like, okay, they're gonna do the classic thing where they open up his coffin, they stab him with a stake, and that's what you do to a vampire. No, surprisingly enough, what they end up doing, so basically the plan is to let the lady hook up with the vampire but keep him there until daytime, because, you know, he can't help himself. This lady is all he ever wanted. And so she manages to trick him into staying there until daytime, in which of course the sun shows up and he bursts into flames and he starts spitting up all this blood. It's actually really cool looking. And then he's dead now, and that's it. That's how they ended up defeating him. And I guess the plague goes with him. Like all these plague rats just kind of, the sickness on the city goes because he was the sickness, you know. And that's really what you got here. And I think my thing is, your enjoyment of this film is going to entirely depend on what kind of lens you're going into this with. You know, like I knew that this is going to be a Robert Eggers film. It's going to be slow at parts. It's going to be a lot of beautiful scenery. Characters are going to be talking like they really would talk back then. They're going to, you know, half the time I'm going to be like, wait, what did they say just now? And I'm going to have to like try to really pay attention to, like, you know, they're using old-timey words and phrases, and I got to try and think about like what are they even talking about at some parts. But yeah, overall, I really enjoyed this movie. I think this is going to be something that you could put on during Halloween time and kind of have like this atmospheric vibe, you know, especially if you've never been interested in watching the original Nosferatu or any of the original vampires or Dracula stories, and you know, like, you know what, let's see what this is all actually about. And I think this is a good one to start with. So yeah, I don't know, that's Nosferatu. It's not going to be for everybody. A lot of people are going to be like, wait, she had sex with with the vampire? You know, like, or like, oh man, it was so slow. They're talking so much and it's all just old-timey speak. And it's just, I think that's the thing. Like, at this point in time, if you watched The Lighthouse and you watched The Witch, you should know what to expect from this director. He's not making your normal Hollywood horror movies or anything like that. Like, it's all about vibes with this guy. So that's what you get here, and I think it works. Now, if anything else, it also made me really curious to kind of dive deeper into original vampire lore, because there's definitely some things where I'm trying to understand, like, what was the idea here? You know, like, he has these dogs, like, are these hounds of hell, or are these, like, you know, like, or are these supposed to be sort of werewolf type things? Like, you know, what exactly is supposed to be happening? And also, what is his, you know, he's got like a weird telepathy thing happening. He can kind of just show up. He can be like on a boat, but then he can also like just show up to someone in a window. And it's like, are you physically here? Or is this just in their mind? Are they having a dream? What's really happening, you know? And the film kind of plays with you like that, you know, like you're constantly having characters wake up out of a situation and you're like, I can't tell what just happened was real or not, you know. And like, that's just kind of the dreamlike quality this movie has all over it. And I don't know, I think it's really cool in the way that it plays around with you like that. Anyways, let me know what you guys think about Nosferatu. And do you know about vampire lore, like traditional original vampire lore, or like me, are you just like, yeah, I saw a bunch of movies, I watched Blade a bunch, you know, and that's what I know. So let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.